up for the first resilience sessions for Chefs Manifesto. I'm going to go into a grand introduction to all of it in a minute. We're going to play our Chefs Manifesto theme tune. But I do have a chef joining me from South Africa, Mokgadi, who is going to tell us all her stories about the bambara nut. We're just waiting for Mokgadi to dial back in. She's setting up her kitchen, and you know how it is with chefs, rock and roll. We've got some great ingredients going on. So I'll be turning my back to you because I'm going to try and keep up with Mokgadi. I don't know how many people are actually going to cook along. It's a really interesting recipe using bambara nuts, which are South African nuts, indigenous to South Africa, but also to West Africa. And you know, Mokgadi said to me, if you can't get the bambara nut there, just use chickpeas. So I've cooked some chickpeas and I'm just mashing at the moment. So hopefully you'll see me keep up with Mokgadi. So we're going to go quiet for probably 2 or 3 minutes while we set it all up. But it's great to see you here and join in at this early stage. We'll be waiting for probably another 15, 20 people to join us. So I appreciate your patience. It's only minutes away from starting. Hello, just a quick update. We're just waiting for a dial-in from Mokgadi in South Africa. For those of you who are just joining, it won't be a minute or two while we get everything set up. I'm just mashing my chickpeas to keep up with Chef Mokgadi's recipe. She's not using chickpeas, she's using bambara nuts from South Africa, indigenous. She's been telling me some amazing stories about the culture, about the rituals around the nuts. But I'm not going to spoil it for you. Mokgadi's going to tell a story. I'll just be back with you 1 second. Okay. Thanks, Tom. Sorry, I got myself muted there, which is some weird thing going on. Okay. Hello, everybody. And hi to Mokgadi. Thank you for joining us from South Africa. Can you hear me, Mokgadi? Are you muted? Okay, we're almost there, everybody. Tom, is there any chance you could unmute Mokgadi? Is there an unmute button?
Yeah, just fixing that now.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We are just about to start.
Mokgadi is unmuted. We're just not picking up any sound from her right now.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure she'll be able to. Maybe she needs to dial in, dial out.
Shall we kick off with the Chefs Manifesto video? That will give us a nice start.
Mokgadi, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Collar never fit clean on me. Only thing nice is the jeans on me. Playing dirty, trying to switch on me. Only thing pretty is the...
Wherefore art thou from?
Where's it going?
rugged wrist.
What is it? Is it in season?
How far has this traveled? Is that happy?
You sure you need it?
As chefs, we ask questions about food.
I've been there wildin'. Angel on my shoulder saying about it.
Why so much plastic?
We sit between the food you eat
And how it gets to you.
I swear to God. It's my
So we're getting together from all countries, all parts of the industry.
all walks of life to bring positive change to the kitchen. We're talking soil,
Carbon,
waste,
diversity,
Biodiversity.
water.
accessibility.
And what have we got to say for ourselves? Plenty.
This is the Chefs Manifesto.
Okay, back over to you, Arthur.
Fabulous. So yes, this is the Chefs Manifesto. We're here at 6:00 p.m. in the UK, and we are joined by Mokgadi in South Africa. Now, Mokgadi, we can see you, and I can see a rather flat chef's jacket you're wearing, but can you hear me? Because I don't know if I can hear you.
There, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you too. Hey, Mokgadi, it's great to see you.
Great to see everyone. How are you doing?
We're dialing in.
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, Mokgadi, what we're doing is, this is a Chefs Manifesto discussion from chefs from all over the world, and we've been talking about migration and movement of food, and it's kind of led us to a much more focused discussion around resilience. Resilience meaning how can we adapt to the physical, social, and economic issues that we're facing in these times, the COVID-19 times. But there are other issues, around famine, around, emergency issues, even wars that come in. And how resilient are we as both local communities and as a planet? And I thought the chefs and the way chefs approach food would be a really good way of discussing resilience. So we're coming at you live, Chefs Manifesto Resilience Sessions. This is number 1. This is being hosted by Omved Gardens. So thank you to Omved Gardens for doing this. And welcome to everybody. And thank you for joining this session. Mokgadi, I don't really want to say too much about your ingredient because I don't know too much about your ingredient. But when I reached out to chefs from all over the world, I said, who's got a resilient ingredient we need to talk about? You've come forward and you're the first one. So this is our first session. I'm so excited. Mokgadi, tell me, first of all, what have you chosen? Why have you chosen it? And how is it embedded in your culture and the local community of South Africa?
Well, the ingredient that I chose is bambara groundnut, and purely because I've had firsthand interaction with the nut. My grandmother, who was a subsistence farmer and very rural, actually grew the bambara nut and she sold them at the market. So she made a living planting, growing, harvesting, and then selling them. For me, it's always been such an integral part of her her farmer's life, because every time she grew the nut, every time she harvested, I always got a bag from her. I mean, I always got a bag from her. From the time I was a kid, she'd bring like bags to my family, to my home, to my dad's house. And even when I'd left home and I was living, away from home, I always got a bag of bambara nuts from her. So for me, they've got like that special, there's a special information around the nut for me. And also another thing that I've discovered about the nut is that, it's one of those ingredients that grows. It's indigenous to Africa and Asia, but it grows wild in West Africa and in Southern Africa. So it's one of those nuts that really links us Africans. It links the West and the South. So I'm very, very excited to share my recipe with you today. And again, for me, growing up, the bambara was always, we always ate it harvest time, and we ate it as a snack, but we also ate it in stews. We also ate it in stews. We also ate it almost everything. It was one of those. It's one of those ingredients that brings protein into our meals. So because the nut is packed with protein, is packed with nutrients, it's one that is almost like a full meal when you eat it. So if you're having maize meal, or if you're having samp, or if you're having sorghum, you would fortify it with the bambara just to add the protein to the meal. So eating bambara is almost like a whole meal. So for me, it's one of those really, really resilient ingredients, but that's also packed with nutrients. So I absolutely love it.
So in a way, you're talking about an ancient, nut that's used even before perhaps meat was a sort of staple. I mean, in the West, we're having meat every day, every week, every month, all around us. But actually, looking back culturally at different types of cultures and times, meat wasn't always eaten all the time. Meat was a celebratory thing 3 or 4 times a year, whereas you would have to get your protein from vegetables and nuts, right?
Yes. Definitely. I mean, I grew up, my grandmother was a subsistence farmer, and we hardly ever ate meat at her home. She grew everything, and nuts, bambara being one of them, lots of melons, lots of maize, sorghum, millets, and we hardly ever ate meat. And if we did eat meat, it was literally on special occasions, and it was one of those really it's called hard body chicken. So it's like one of those really old chickens that's been around forever, and it's been running around. So the meat's quite tough, but it's a delicacy also. So we only ate meat literally on feasts and festivals. We hardly ever ate meat. So for me, it also just shows where our original food comes from. Our original food is plant-based, and we all got our energy and our protein from nuts, like the groundnut.
And so the groundnut, I'm assuming, grows in the ground. I mean, I've not done my homework because I want you to tell me everything. And we've got about 10 minutes to discuss this before we need to go into the recipe. Now, I'm not sure if anyone else is following along with the recipe. Is anybody going to follow along with us? Can anyone wave at me or quickly let me know if they're going to follow along? Because if not, Mokgadi and I are just going to cook along and then show you the end dish. I'm sure it looks like no one's going to cook with us, Mokgadi. So
We've got a wave.
Sorry, Tom?
We've got a wave from Jenny.
Oh, hi, Jenny. Okay, brilliant. Jenny, thank you so much for So my point is that I don't know anything about the groundnut. We've got another 5 or 6 minutes to discuss it. How does it grow, Mokgadi? You talk about it being seed.
The groundnut is literally grown now because now we're going into summer. So we're in spring now. So it's from October and November, when the weather is hot, after the first rains. And it's one of those nuts that grows, it thrives grown amongst millets, sorghums, and all those other indigenous crops. It's also one, in Africa, especially the Southern Africa, it is grown mostly by women. So, and there's a whole lot of stories around why women are the only ones growing it. Well, there's this whole thing around taboo around men. If you grow groundnut, then you'll be infertile. Whereas with women growing groundnut, it actually increases fertility. And also, there's all these myths around groundnut, but I figure it's because they're trying, you know, it's always been grown and harvested by women. So women are always the ones, you know, making a living out of groundnut. So there's always stories around groundnut and around growing it, which is why women only grow it. What else? There's just one of those ingredients that I think, you know, the stories around it, you know, at funerals, it's always packed in when they bury somebody, they'll always put a groundnut in there because apparently it's a sacred nut like that. It's also for protection. It's used by herbalists for protection, for medicine. So if you know, a herbalist or a traditional doctor gives you medicine, they'll put the medicine ground up in the groundnut. So again, it's seen as a healer. So for me, it's one of those that is so entrenched in our culture and so entrenched in who we are as Africans that I think its resilience is incredible. Also because it seems like, you know, because it's found in the West and the South, it moves between those two regions. And, you know, everybody loves the groundnut. It's one of the third highest grown or highest crops in Africa after peanuts and cowpeas. So it's a very important crop in Africa. And I mean, we do all sorts of amazing things with it.
Well, you know, what's interesting is that I've been looking at different types of resilience across the planet, because as soon as we reach out as chefs and say, okay, not just localized to the UK or localized to the US or localized to Europe or localized to Asia or Africa, what on the planet means that we are resilient in times of difficulty? You know, when you stress something, when you push and you sort of squeeze on an environment and a culture and a community and say, right, well, you're now under pressure. For example, like COVID's happened, you know, people weren't able to, you know, even pick some of the food that was growing because they had, you know, we didn't have the migrant workers, we didn't have workers in the field because people couldn't pick the food. So we had issues around, you know, food supply. And now that is movement of food and migration of people, but also how can we then become resilient if, for example, the water failure, there's a drought or there's a fire? What is it that makes us resilient? And so when chefs came together and said, well, right, the bambara nut is something that we use in Africa, and it's ancient and it really embeds itself in our culture, and we turn to it in times of, well, in times of plenty, but also in times of difficulty. Have you got any stories from, like you talk about your grandma, you know, teaching you about the bambara nut, she was growing it. Are there any memories that you have of the bambara nut really connecting to a community, not just to a festival, but maybe in hardship or allowed you to how can I say, to keep the community glued together because of the bambara?
Like I said, you know, it's one of those that people use to gift to people. So in times of hardships, and you know that the bambara is very resilient. So it grows very well in dry areas also. So even in droughts, you knew you could depend on the nut. It's the one thing that you know for sure it will grow. And people would share it amongst each other because it's literally, because it's packed with protein, it becomes almost like a full meal. So in times of drought, in times of hardships, people would share the bambara just as a sign of love, but also just a sign of resilience, because it's one of those that even if there's drought, you know you're still gonna get you're still gonna get your harvest from bambara. So it's one of those that has, even now during COVID, you know, cooking bambara with my you know, with millet or with sorghum, always for me complements. It's a meal. It's a complete meal with no meat, with no anything. It's just the bambara itself is just one of those very resilient crops.
Arthur, we have a question from B. Farrell asking, is the groundnut the same as the bambara nut?
Yes, it definitely is. It's a bambara nut or bambara groundnut, and groundnut because it grows under the ground. It's literally, when you look at the crop, all you see is just the green. You see the green leaves, and when you pull out the green leaves, it's all these nuts inside. So it grows underground. It's one of those underground nuts. It doesn't come out. It's not a tree nut or like other beans or legumes that grow outside the ground. It grows inside the ground, which is why it's called a ground nut.
Thank you, B, for that question. Any other questions? Either drop it into that. I didn't see it because I was too busy chopping onions. Mokgadi, I'm going to to keep talking about the bambara nut, we probably need to cook this recipe because we need to taste this recipe. I am cooking along. Now, I'm using chickpeas at your suggestion, Mokgadi, because I can't get groundnuts, bambara nuts, because I'm in rural Lancashire. And so I also don't get chickpeas in rural Lancashire, but I have got dried chickpeas, which I've cooked, and I'm just mashing. But, you know, do you want to introduce your recipe, Mokgadi, and we'll start firing on all cylinders and get this cooked?
Okay. So my recipe is, what I've done is I've basically taken the groundnut as an ingredient, and I've just brought it back into 2020, into my life in 2020. I've got a 17-year-old son, and he loves burgers, and I can never get him to eat anything vegetarian or anything plant-based. I mean, I struggle. So the only way I know how is burgers. So I basically took the groundnut, and I'm gonna make a vegetarian or a bean patty with it. And I'm serving that with a chakalaka relish, which is, chakalaka is one of those it's a South African dish, which is literally a mixture of all sorts of vegetables with spices, and you make it into a relish. And we normally serve that with as a side with our dishes. So in this case, it's going to come as a relish for the burger. So I've got here my nuts. Okay. I just saw that other question. I missed that. So I've got my bambara nuts, which what I did is I soaked them and then I cooked them. I just boiled them until they're tender. So you could do that with any bean, really. And these are what the beans look like. This is what the nut looks like. So
how long does that take to cook?
The what?
How long does that bambara nut take to cook? So when it's out of the ground fresh, do you boil it? Do you just roast it, toast it?
So once it's cooked, you can do whatever. You can roast it, you can toast it. What I normally do is, once I've cooked like this, growing up, we would eat them like this, raw, like cooked with a little bit of salt, and you just eat them, snack on them like that. Or we could roast them with spices and snack on them. Or you could add them to soups. You could add them to your sorghum. You could add them to anything really that requires a bean. So we cook them. We treat them like you would a bean.
Okay, I gotcha. Now a little question coming in here from Alex Led. Hi Alex, nice to see you online with us. I appreciate that. Could we use peanuts instead? Alex is asking. Some peanuts are even higher in protein than the bambara groundnut. But one of the issues that, Alex, if I may bring in here before Mokgadi answers, is that we're looking at the resilience. And I know that peanuts weren't originally African. And what's great is that there's this indigenous ingredient that Mokgadi is using. So although the peanut may have some higher protein, we're looking to a more localized agenda for ingredients.
Yes.
But Mokgadi, we talk a little bit about the bambara nut. Lots of different uses. It really absorbs flavors. You can shape it, you can eat it in different ways. I love the way you say your relish. I'm not even going to, so I'll try and say it. Is it chakalaka? What is this relish? Because you say you use it across Africa, or is it South African? What is chakalaka?
It's a South African relish, and it's basically veggie. It's a veggie relish. So it's green beans, carrot. You can add cabbage if you like. And you have to add beans. You can have beans in there. So I'm using green beans, onions, spices, vinegar, chili. So it's like sweet and spicy relish, sweet and spicy vegetable relish. It's a vegetable relish.
Fabulous. So what are we making first? So you're grinding up the nuts here. We've also got to get the millet going. I'm not going to use. I'm using bulgur wheat because I couldn't get the right millet, and I wanted to try.
Look, if you can't get millet, you can use bulgur wheat, or you can use couscous, or you can use whatever grain you fancy. I like millet because, again, it's one of those ingredients that we use here at home, and it goes very well with the bambara. It really complements the bambara, and it kind of like holds the burger together.
So what are you doing there now? You're crushing the bambara nuts. You're going to do, it looks like here in the recipe that you're doing 2 cups of the nut to 1 either millet or bulgur wheat or couscous, like you say. Are there any questions to what Mokgadi's already doing? We've got the smashing of the bambara nuts, the cooked bulgur wheat millets. We're going to add those in a bowl, and then the rest of the ingredients, the chopped herbs, the ginger, the paprika. Run us through this recipe, Mokgadi.
Yes, and you basically smash. You can blend them if you want. I like to smash them because you leave them. You have a bit of chunk in there. So I just smash them with a fork or back of a spoon, like I'm doing, and then we add the rest of our ingredients, which is garlic, ginger, the herbs, the spices, which are cumin. So we've got cumin there. Got garlic and ginger.
Now I'm putting my garlic in raw. I'm putting my ginger in raw, and I'm through the smashed millet and chickpeas, right? Or bambara nuts.
Yes. Just smash it all in there, and then you're gonna add your fresh herbs. I like mint, coriander, and parsley are my favorite. So I like to combine those 3. Whatever you like, you can put in there. As you can see, I like my stuff quite spicy. I'm a true African. So I'll have the cumin. The cumin will bring in that nice earthiness, and the chili of the chakalaka will bring in the spicy.
Well, tell me, you say, because I'm going out of screen now, I've got to get my carrots. Mokgadi, you say because I'm African, I like it spicy. Is that something? Because I always think of India as spicy, but is Africa spicy?
Yes, Africa is definitely spicy. I don't know if we were spicy before the Indians came or we've always been spicy. I don't know. But however way we ended up being spicy, we're very spicy. I mean, here in South Africa, acha, which is a mango pickle, has become synonymous to township cuisine. And township cuisine is basically ghetto cuisine. So acha, we have literally taken the acha and made it ours to a point where in the townships, there's a lot of recipes for acha, different recipes. So everybody's coming up with their own. You'll find each family has like their own acha recipe. That's how we've basically adopted the acha, which is very Indian in origin, but we've literally made it our own.
Nice.
So yeah, we're very spicy.
That's what's so interesting about food and how culture and the experience of food migrates. So you'll have maybe an Indian chutney, but you'll have a groundnut from Africa, and you put the 2 together, and suddenly you've got a delicious dish, right?
Exactly. So I've mashed my groundnut in, and I'm just gonna add my millet.
Okay, I'm keeping up with you, Mokgadi. Now, is it Jenny? Jenny, how are we doing? Are you managing to keep up with us?
Jenny, we're going to take you off mute, if that's all right with you, and you can talk to Arthur and Mokgadi and tell us how you're getting on.
Hi, Jenny, can you hear me?
Yeah, I am keeping up. That's great.
Right. Have you got a camera? Come on, let's see what you're doing. Because I've got a cup of my crushed chickpeas here. Are you allowed to share your recipe with me or not? I don't mind. Maybe we can see the end product. Okay, so Mokgadi, I've got 2 cups of the groundnut, or as I say, chickpeas.
And 1 cup of millet.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's 2 cups of the nuts and 1 cup of the millet or bulgur wheat or couscous or whatever you're using.
Okay. Got that. Now, Mokgadi, does your son truly eat this burger?
Yes. It's the only plant-based anything you eat. I think also he loves the bambara. I think from a very young age, because I'm so in love with it, and I grew up munching on the nuts, I kind of like got him into that. So already when he was young, he was already eating the nuts. So it was easy for me to turn them into burgers, to get him to eat anything plant-based. So he'll eat that because, again, the taste of the bambara is very, very different from any other bean. It's very creamy and luscious, and he loves that. So it's literally the only thing he'll eat that that resembles anything plant-based.
So the fact that your son, who's 17, is experiencing the bambara nut and loving its texture and loving its flavour, is actually passing on again to the future. You want to think that your son, of his time, is talking about the bambara nut to his family, right?
Hopefully he will. Hopefully he'll pass it on. But you know, it was passed on to me by my grandmother. So I'm hoping that even if he doesn't pass it on, but if at some point he has kids, I'll pass it on to those kids. Also, just by introducing him to the bambara, by literally making him eat them like snacks, like I do. You know, I grew up eating them like snacks, and that's how I fell in love, because it was stuff that you ate when you're waiting for dinner, and they were so delicious and filling that by the time dinner came, you were just like, all right, you know. So it's one thing that I hope he'll pass it on. Okay, now, so where are we? We've got the groundnuts, we've got the millets, or the bulgur wheat in here, in the bowl. What else is going in there? I've got some salt. I've got the cumin went in. Some salt went in. Some pepper, fresh herbs, chopped up some herbs. I've just chopped up some garlic, ginger went in there, some fresh herbs. So I used mint, I used coriander, and I also used parsley in there. So lots of fresh herbs, lots of flavor. Yes, lots of flavor. For me, anything without flavor kind of like falls flat. So I try to put in as much flavor as I can in anything that I make. So I think the mixture is ready now to roll and go into the oven. So I'm just gonna baste my my oven tray with a little bit of oil, and then put the burgers into the oven. I bake mine instead of frying purely because I just like the crisp and the crunch of the dry heat from the oven. Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting along there. Put some fresh herbs in. I've got salt. I've got pepper. Or some fresh ginger. More fresh ginger here. Yes. Now ginger's an interesting one. How long have you been using ginger? I love ginger. I use it in most of my cooking. Like for me, I grew up eating a lot of spicy food because my great-grandmother, who was Indian, kind of like passed on from my mom's side, kind of passed on the love of spices to me via my grandmother. So I love, ginger is one of them. Garlic, I use garlic and ginger on almost everything that I make. Yeah, so I've been cooking with ginger most of my life. I even drink it. I'll make, you know, I'll chop up, grate some ginger and into my teas, make some tea with it. Moringa ginger is one of my favorite teas. So yeah, I love ginger. It's one of those, it's a staple in my house. I always have ginger. Well, I've come across a number of people from Africa talking about moringa. Have you got any stories about moringa too? Because it seems to be power-packed. I mean, imagine moringa and bambara nut. I mean, you'd be living forever, right? Exactly. And the funny thing about moringa is that it's not even African. It's just one of those naturalized crops. It's actually from India, but it grows wild in, you know, I don't know how it ended up in Africa, but it ended up in the south of Africa, in Limpopo. And the story about the moringa in Limpopo is that one of the princes in Khasikukuni, she actually came back from India with the seeds, and she passed it on to her subjects because she found out that the tree actually has healing properties and it's a perfect supplement. So now in Khasikukuni, every single family has a tree of moringa growing in their homestead. So for me, it's one of those, it's like a naturalized ingredient that came from India but ended up in Africa and ended up in South Africa, and now it grows and it's become part of our heritage also, even though it's not indigenous to us.
I love that story.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you that ingredients they travel. Yeah. They travel and they become different things in different places. But as long as the soil is ready or the soil is right, whatever ingredient will actually travel and grow in different parts of the world and be naturalized in that part of the world.
So, I mean, also, you talk about resilience of the plants and resilience of the community and culture, but just quickly as a chef, how have you managed to get through COVID-19, the lockdown, resilience inside your business or inside your family? Because I always think there's something to be said about the resilience of the human being. You know, how have we managed to survive through this time? How have you managed to survive?
Oh, it's been tough, Arthur, but what's happened with me is, again, as a human being, you kind of like learn to find ways and to find, COVID kind of like brought out it's like your worst nightmare coming true. But you realize that actually, even during the worst times, you actually find yourself and you're able to find other ways to survive and to literally dig deep and ask yourself, do I really even want to be in this space? Why am I in this space? So for me, what's happened is that I came out of the space very, very resolute about what I want to do, and also about how to do it and how to involve other humans and how to be present in my business. Right. And by present, I mean how to actually make my business more human-centric. So now more than ever, everything that I do is to also just help other people in and around my community. So the farmers that I work with, the ladies that work for me, everybody now almost has a role in this larger message or larger undertaking that we've all undertaken as a business. And basically my focus now is again on growing these indigenous ingredients, talking about them, championing them, but also bringing them into my kitchen as a staple. So also just teaching other people in and around me. I've also gone into a space where I work more with the farmers, and again, also around processing and helping them learn how to store, how to preserve their produce, and how to get more money for their produce. So it's been a period for me, it's been a period of learning, but it's also been a period that literally cracked me open as a human being.
Sounds interesting there, Mokgadi, that from a perspective of someone who knows about food like you do so deeply in your core, that you're able to influence and make more people resilient. For example, the agricultural sector, the growers, the producers, who you could say, look, you can make more money from this in this way. And it's interesting how chefs, originally we just chopped onions and cooked food, right? But now there seems to be this real lifting of our voice to enable others to be more resilient. And it sounds so amazing what you've been doing down there.
Yeah, it's been a spiritual period for all of us. But for me, I mean, for a while there, I was like, I didn't want to cook for anyone. I don't want to cook. So it took me, I had to sit down and say to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I here? What's my role in this whole situation? If I'm a chef, if I'm going to have a platform to talk about food, I want to be a person that changes people's ways of eating, move people towards a more healthier lifestyle, so we can be, sustainable as humans, but also going forward, because what COVID showed us was your health means everything. If you're not healthy, you're not going to survive anything. So for me as a chef, I've now, my approach to food has been also from that point. It's now literally, I have to think about every single thing that I make or I cook or I push. Is it nutritional? Is it good for the earth? I have to ask myself all these questions. And I think if anything positive came out of COVID, that's the one thing.
Well, Mokgadi, just to let everyone else who's tuned in, Mokgadi is one of the senior chefs within the Chefs Manifesto global connection. Mokgadi is so influential in the way she talks about the way food impacts on people's lives, how she integrates people within her community in South Africa, and also on a global spectrum. I was inspired by Mokgadi when I visited her in Johannesburg. We cooked together a delicious meal for the United Nations General Assembly down there in Johannesburg, which was a brilliant time. But Mokgadi, I do know truly why you're here, and that's to share your chakalaka recipe, because now I'm putting my look, here they are. I hope I've done your recipe. These are my 4 patties. They're going in the oven. My chakalaka has started. I love saying that word. I'm going to say chakalaka now for 20 minutes. Talk us through the chakalaka. What are you chopping there?
Okay, so I'm chopping the green beans, and I said that you can use 6 green beans or a handful. I've got a handful of green beans here, which I'm just chopping roughly. Chop them as small as you want, or as large as you want. Remembering that they're gonna go in your burger, so you don't want them too chunky. You want them to be bite size also. So I'm chopping my green beans. So it's green beans, onion, red onion. It's the red onions which I've chopped. Green beans, I've chopped meat. Some carrots that I've grated. Spices, I've used here curry powder, so any curry powder that you like, you can use that. And then I've got my chilies. Yeah. And then I've got my garlic, which I'm gonna chop up roughly also, and my ginger. So I'm gonna start now the relish. I'm just gonna heat some oil in there.
Wow, this is an amazing recipe.
Heat some oil in the pan.
Have we got any questions here? From Jeannie, how long do we cook the burgers? Jeannie, it looks like they're all cooked, so I think it's just about getting a lovely crust on the top. So I think probably maybe 8 minutes, 10 minutes, depending how hot your oven is. Mokgadi, how long would you cook these patties for?
8 to 10 minutes until you get a nice crust.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Jeannie. Now, just to let everyone know, please excuse us, we're going to run over a tiny bit late. We got a few technical issues from South Africa with the tuning in, Wi-Fi, etc. So if you're okay with sticking with us, it'd be great. Probably going to run maybe 7 minutes over time. I'm just about to get my vinegar into my chutney base. I think I'm ahead of you, Mokgadi. Although you are leading me, I think I've got already cooked.
My nuts are already in the oven. So now I'm just making the relish. So I've just added my onions and my garlic and the spice in there, the curry powder. Just added the green beans, the carrots, and we're just gonna cook that. And then we're gonna add the tomato paste.
Yeah.
In there.
Now, one of the things that I'm so intrigued by is the culture of African food, Mokgadi, because I've always kind of realized that it's never had a loud enough voice on the planet, but the food and the culture and the flavors and the diversity is so rich. Do you want to talk a little bit about African cuisine and maybe perhaps how resilient it actually has been?
Yeah, it's amazing that you're saying that now. I mean, we're going through such a revolution right now as African chefs. African food now is at the forefront. I suppose, it's a lot of our food people have discovered that our food is nutrient dense. So now us as African chefs, we've basically been thrust into the spotlight, and we have to showcase what we have. For me, it's a beautiful thing that's happening to African food, because for the first time in a long time, we as African chefs are representing our own food, and we're telling our stories, and we're sharing our stories with the world. It's a very important time in our lives right now. So I'm very, very excited about it. And as you know, I mean, we've got chefs from Nigeria, we've got chefs at the Chefs Manifesto, we've got chefs from Nigeria, from Tanzania, from Ethiopia, from all over Africa, who are doing incredible work to really champion and showcase African food. And again, you know, it's time. As they say, Africa, your time is now. It's our time now. We have a lot of healing herbs, healing plants that could be used to help people, even feed us as Africans. So for the first time in a long time, African food has actually been shown to not just be resilient, or also just be just that place where you know, we're filled with hunger and we're constantly needing aid, but a place where there's a lot of good food, a lot of nutrient-dense ingredients, resilient ingredients. So it's that time, and I'm very excited to be a part of that that revolution.
I'm excited to be a part of it too. Although it's culturally, it needs to be connected. We're all connected through food, right?
Exactly. We're all connected through food, and it's amazing that for the first time, people are more interested in what Africans are eating, you know? For me, that, I think, you know, if people could even just show a little bit of interest and start making, you know, start cooking African food, start creating all these interesting, amazing dishes from Africa. I think that's the way, you know, that's the only way we really can connect as Africans and the rest of the world, you know, because food is that one connector, is that one thing that unites everybody, you know? So, you know, we could fight about all sorts of things, but if I love your food, chances are I'll fall in love with you eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's have a look from Alex to everyone. The sounds, the wise and wonderful use of this strange time, Mokgadi. You've made a blessing and found the silver lining in everything you've been doing. Alex Laird says that she loves your approach to humanity, Mokgadi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we all, I think if anything, what COVID has done is that it has awakened our humanity, all of us. I mean, I've seen people do such incredible work for other people in this period. And, you know, I was just so blown away by it, because it just kind of like shows you that you could be suffering, or you could think that your life sucks, but helping another person actually takes that burden of feeling like you're not worth anything. Helping another human being is all you have really in this period. And I've seen so many people show such kindness with nothing to offer. And it's just humbled me. So it's that period that I think all of us must rejoice, because there is a silver lining to COVID. You know, I mean, a lot of us lost people, we lost family, we lost friends, but we're still here, you know, and we must just be thankful that we're still here. And yeah, and if we're still here, we should be able to help other people, you know, and, you know, it's literally brought back humanity.
What I love, Mokgadi, is the fact that I mean, sure, the resilience exists around the world, and we know South America has been resilient, we know that India and China have been resilient, but if I was to say what are the most resilient continents, it has to be Africa, because it has been through so much for so long, and yet it's so strong, and that shows such a deep resilience within the people, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, again, it's one of those things, Arthur, we as Africans, I think we're very resilient, we're very strong. I mean, everybody expected COVID to literally wipe us off the face of the earth because of poverty, because of just the way, you know, our cities are, you know, are like so dense that everybody expected the virus to spread quickly. And for some strange reason, it didn't. And Africa has some of the lowest numbers, although South Africa is high up there though. We as South Africans, we have a lot of people who suffered, but we also have one of the highest rates of recoveries. Again, it just shows you the resilience of Africans in general. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, Africa, your time has come to show the world what you can do. And COVID being the way, whatever happened during COVID, we're still in COVID. It's just shown us that we can survive anything, really, as Africans, and we have ourselves. We've got the tools ourselves. We don't need to look outside for tools. We already have the tools to survive. I mean, we're resilient. We've been around for so long, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. There's another very interesting point from Alex. Alex, I'm so glad you're adding all these points here. Alex says to you, Mokgadi, exactly. We all create a civil society. We just need to show our not always competent leaders how to lead, how to model resilience and create the conditions for it. They need some educating, and we're in a position to educate. They need powerful persuasion. And so we need to kind of use food to create the civility in our society. So Alex, thank you again for making that point. Perhaps, Mokgadi, you'd like to talk about how we can sway people, certainly leaders, to be more compassionate and understand the human condition.
Well, what's happened here with us is that, strangely enough, a lot of our leaders got sick. A lot of the leaders got sick and they got COVID. So God basically, or COVID, the universe, just basically taught them, shoved them into humanity's face. So a lot of them came out of that experience being more compassionate. So again, it's our leaders really, they need to, if anything, COVID has shown them that they need to put their people first. The people first before money, before anything. The people first, because without people, you don't have anything. You don't have country, you don't have civil, you don't have a workforce, you don't have taxes, you don't have anything without the people. So you need to put those people first. And it's amazing how, for a country like ours that never has any money for anything, for schools, for education, for even for health. But as soon as we got hit with COVID, there was 500 billion on the table to help people. So it's like all this money came out of nowhere to help people. So again, it showed us that our governments, for the first time, because everyone is so scared and nobody really knew what was going to happen, for the first time, they put us first. So I think in a way, COVID kind of like showed everyone, including our governments, who's important and who they need to think of first.
Well, and the fact that food is a great humbler of people, and there's a point here for me saying, do you think, Mokgadi, that the food of Africa and the food of the Africans actually made them more resilient to the COVID experience?
Enough, I think so, hey? I really do. I really believe that the kind of food, especially like if you look at South Africa has been colonized by fast foods. And I think because of that, that's why we're the highest in Africa. We've got, we're the highest, contractors of COVID. Even we basically got the highest numbers in all of Africa. And strangely enough, we're the ones that have a lot of those, the fast food joints going. If you look at places like Ethiopia, if you look at places like Sudan, Rwanda, there aren't a lot of fast food places. There aren't a lot of comorbidities caused by lifestyle diseases. So I really do believe that it's what we eat as Africans. And if you look, even in South Africa, the rural areas actually had very, very little COVID as opposed to the urban areas. So again, for me, I think it's the food that we eat, the food that we eat in the urban setting as opposed to the rural setting is very different. It's very processed, over-processed, very little nutrients. it literally has nothing, which is why a lot of us in the urban areas got sick and people in the rural areas didn't. So I really do believe it's the food that we eat.
So there's an answer for you, B, and I agree wholeheartedly. Now, just to quickly reiterate what we are, this is the Chefs Manifesto. This is being facilitated by Omved Gardens. We're so glad that on the first session that you could all join us. This is Resilient Sessions by the Chefs Manifesto, hosted by Omved Gardens. And this is the first of 6. We've got some fabulous chefs lined up. Mokgadi, being the bravest of all of them, said, I'll go first because I've got a story to tell. And so it's been so fantastic to have Mokgadi here cooking with us. Mokgadi, let's put this dish together so we can finish off. I appreciate you taking up so much of people's time. Thank you all so much for being here. Mokgadi, my buns are warming in the oven. Sounds good.
Okay, I'm done with my relish. So my relish is done. Yeah. So I just cooked it down. I added a little bit of sugar just to balance the vinegar and the sugar. And it's cooked down, it's ready. So I'm gonna check on my burgers, on my patties. My patties are almost ready. So I'll just prepare my bun in the meantime to get it ready for the patty.
Okay.
So like what I said on the recipe, you know, you can put whatever you like on your bun. Now, I love pickles. So one of my favorite pickle is chumulea, which is the morojo, which is a green, a South African green, which have pickles. I'm gonna use that as the base, and then I'm gonna have the relish on top of the patty.
Okay, amazing. Well, what I'm doing on the bottom of my Mokgadi is I'm using chicory.
Oh, yum, yum. That sounds amazing.
You know, just if anyone knows these chicories, I just break off the outside layer. This is a red chicory, endive, a little bitter, really good for the digestion. I'm just going to put this on the base of my burger patty. Now, you've rubbed your burger patty with garlic. I think that's a great idea.
Yes, I toasted it and I just rubbed it with a bit of garlic. And then I'm going to use the morojo from my range of Uju Spice pickles. And I'm just going to put the morojo at the bottom. It's so delicious. It's literally a green that is very hearty like kale. And we just pickle it with some onions and some spices. And the nice thing is that, we pickle it raw. So it's not cooked. It's raw. So you're literally eating raw kale with all that flavor and all that crunch, and it's yummy, and it's also good for the tummy because it's been pickled and left to literally brew over time. So I think my patties are ready. Out.
So I've put on the base of my patty, my burger, Mokgadi, if I can hold this up. That's the bun. I'll put a little bit of your relish on the bottom of that, and then I'll put some chicory on the top. Any questions coming in? The chakalaka smells amazing. Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, right.
So Jenny,
it does. It's amazing. It is so delicious.
So we have another led of the low COVID numbers in Africa are very likely due to the high number of phytonutrients, immune stimulating, and fiber in more traditional and locally grown foods. Mokgadi, that's a lovely thing, isn't it? Phytonutrients, traditional, local.
Traditional, local, a lot of the greens that we eat here, even if you look at something like the chakalaka, you'll find in most urban settings. So people here in South Africa like the barbecue, they call it a braai. So the chakalaka is always right there in the braai situation. And what that does is that it brings in vegetables into a plate that normally wouldn't have vegetables, especially in the urban settings with the barbecue or braai. People will eat pap or sorghum with just meat. So the chakalaka being a relish kind of brings in the veg because you've got the carrots, you've got beans, you've got onions, you've got cabbage, you've got all sorts of yummy mix, and it's all vegetables in there. So it brings that into the setting. So again, those phytonutrients that you're talking about, definitely in our food.
Great. Well, I'm plating. Are you plating?
Yes, I've plated. I've plated my burger. So I used a multi-seed roll made with sorghum. It's made with sorghum flour and Yeah, it's very, very delicious. So I use that, and I've got my burger patty in there, and then at the bottom I've got my my morojo, my pickle, and then the chakalaka on top. So I'm ready to go in. I don't know about you, Arthur. So this is what mine looks like.
Wow, that looks amazing. Here's mine, Mokgadi. I hope I've done you justice.
Yay! It looks amazing. It looks amazing.
Now this is going to be like super unctuous. So look how much chakalaka I put in there. Your point about vegetables. I mean, this is basically vegan. This is a vegan.
Yes, it's vegan. Exactly. It's vegan. It's delicious. It's easy. It's simple, but it also brings in. It brings the bambara to the 20th century. 21st century actually, because I mean, I grew up eating bambara. In a different form, but still enjoying it, and I'm still enjoying it here as a burger.
Mokgadi, the true test of a teacher is the student's capacity to understand and emulate. Now I can see there, if I'm saying your name right, Jenny, Mokgadi, look at Jeannie's burger there. That looks fantastic.
Oh my word, that looks amazing. Oh, that looks amazing. That looks amazing. That looks amazing, Jeannie. Well done.
Connected Jeannie to Mokgadi, continents away, but we've managed to get food to connect the two people. And Jeannie, I think that cooking along with us has just been fabulous. And thank you so much. And you've got dinner, so you don't have to do anything.
Oh, lunch over here.
Thank you so much for connecting, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Great. Okay. Well, so Mokgadi, let's wrap this up because we've gone slightly over time, but I appreciate we had issues with connecting. But the Chefs Manifesto has been an unbelievable organisation to draw chefs together, and I wouldn't know you, Mokgadi, if it wasn't for the Chefs Manifesto. And I have learned so much from you from the time I spent with you in Johannesburg and on our Chefs Manifesto meetings and today. But resilience, both culturally, community, ingredients, and from a continent perspective, I'd love you to be able to just finish off with a few points about the importance of resilience, the importance of the ingredient you've chosen, and then we're going to say goodbye. So everyone, we're just winding up now, but I just want to get a little bit more from Mokgadi on resilience and the importance of it.
Yeah, well, like I said to you earlier when we started, that for me, resilience is everything. It's what keeps you going. It's what keeps you going. It's what keeps you there. It's what keeps you bringing your best. So for us at the Chefs Manifesto, these sessions are very important for us because it not only opens us up to other people's journeys around food, but also to other ingredients that we wouldn't otherwise know about. But more importantly, for me, resilience means being there, getting up and fighting another day, getting up and, learning new things, getting up, being as a chef, just being able to adapt and being able to be strong, even with hardships. And, in our work, hardships are our language, So thank you so much, Arthur, for having me here. I'm very proud to be a member of the Chefs Manifesto. I love what the Chef Manifesto does, and hopefully very soon I'll be at Omved Gardens learning from you, Chef.
Well, Mokgadi, I can only give you a big hug from the UK all the way down to South Africa. Your knowledge, your passion, your commitment to food and to people is second to none. And we're so glad to have you as our opening chef for the Resilience Sessions.
Thank you so much.
The Chefs Manifesto. So to everyone who's been a part of today, thank you so much for joining in. Mokgadi, I bow down to you and we say our goodbyes. Tom, I know that we're going to run a sort of goodbye video. Everybody, we also partner up with the SDG2 Advocacy Hub, which is part of the United Nations SDGs, in its entirety. But number 2 deals with zero hunger. And I think it's important that we run this video as a sort of an outplay to this Chefs Manifesto session. So from me, the Chefs Manifesto, Omved Gardens, Mokgadi, you have the last say before this video runs. But goodbye to everybody. Mokgadi, say your last piece.
Thank you so much for for being around. Thank you for watching us and cooking along with us. This has been so incredible for me. I'm so honored to share my recipe, but mostly to share the bambara nut, because it's got such it's very close to my heart. My grandmother grew bambara nuts and sold them for money, and that's how she put my dad through med school and everybody else in the family. So for me, it's one of those resilient ingredients that I wanted to share, because it's got such a personal story for me. So thank you everyone for being here and cooking with us. I really, really, really am honored.
Goodbye, everybody. Don't sign off yet. We're going to run a final video, but thank you all for joining us. I'll say goodbye.